Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am your host for tonight, Anwar Jhetam, from the Islam Media Studios for a special broadcast discussion under the auspices of the United Ulama Council of South Africa, UCSA, and Al-Quds Foundation of South Africa. The important discussion being a red heifer, a herring, or something more sinister. This discussion coming live out of the Salam Media Studios, streamed simultaneously on the Voice of the Cape and Radio Islam International, inshallah. Joining us from across the internet spectrum is the Honorable and respected Dr. Khalid El Awaisi, uh, joined also by Sheikh Ighsaan Taliep and Sheikh Fuad Samaai. To introduce our speakers for tonight, Dr. Khalid Al Awaisi is the Executive Director of Jerusalem Research at the Social Sciences University in Ankara, Turkey. Uh, Thereafter, we have Imam Fuad Samaai, a member of the Muslim Judicial Council MJC of South Africa, and Sheikh Ighsaan Talib of the National Peace College of South Africa and Al-Quds Foundation, who's part of the executive committee of Al-Quds Foundation. Respected ulama, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to tonight's discussion.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
For joining us. Alhamdulillah. The discussion that we have before us, while a very, very critical one, is one that seems to be shrouded in a lot of mystery, mythology, and seems to be quite eschatological in nature. It's done the headlines in various news mediums, and also seems to be the subject uh, of much conspiracy theory, and this being the slaughtering of red heifer cows at the Al-Aqsa compound, which should, according to Jewish belief, usher in an awaited Messiah who will then rebuild the third temple over Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. And this the pending event has gained much international attention. To foreground our discussion, inshallah, I would like to hand over to Dr. Al Awaisi to give us some insight and background into what is actually taking place.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. First of all, I would like to thank you for opening this very important discussion. It's an honor to be alongside Sheikh Ighsaan Talib and Imam Fuad Samaai for this important discussion. What we see here, we need to look at the background of this. And there are two separate things that are going on at the moment. One of them is what the Zionists are trying to do from 2 days ago in taking Qurban or sacrifices inside Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. And this is part of the Passover holidays that the Jews are celebrating. So this is one thing that is happening as we speak, and there is an attempt to slaughter inside Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa or an attempt to smuggle some animals, and there's big rewards for the settlers who are able to achieve this. $13,000 if you're able to smuggle something inside Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Noting that this is not the first time that this has been attempted. The last few years they have tried to attempt to do this through plant sacrifices, and this is within their tradition, part of the Passover holiday. But this red heifer thing is something completely different. And this, the first time I heard of this was from Sheikh Ra'ad Salah in 1997, and the dangers of this. And this is a very dangerous attempt within Zionist Jewish theology. And the idea of this is the reason that Zionist Jews have not been entering inside al-Masjid al-Aqsa in great numbers is because of this hurdle that they have not been able to get over. The Jews believe that they are najis, they are impure, the impurity of the dead. And for this reason, at the gate of Maghariba, at al-Masjid al-Aqsa, it is written, according to the Torah, it is forbidden to enter this site, meaning the site of Al Masjid Al Aqsa. So you can see this within this context. Since 1967, the chief rabbinate of Israel has said that entering the area of Al Masjid Al Aqsa, what they call the Temple Mount, between quotation mark, is forbidden completely. Now, what you have since then are revisionist Jewish groups who are trying to say, well, we don't know exactly where the temple is. So as long as we're not treading on that site, we are able to enter Al Masjid Al Aqsa. So you see the numbers in their hundreds. Entering Al Masjid Al Aqsa over the last few days, or over the last few months, or over the last few years. The hurdle that they need to get over is that for them to be purified, red heifers need to be sacrificed, not eaten but burnt. And this, the burning, the ashes will then be mixed with water, and that will purify the Jewish people from the impurity that they are in. So it's a very theologically, from an Islamic point of view, impurity, and that doesn't work even within a Christian theology. This doesn't work. So for the last 20 years in particular, actually even 30 years, they have been looking. So they have been growing, nurturing red cows. However, by the time it reaches the age, then they have to inspect. If there is one white hair or any other color, then they cannot sacrifice it. And they have tried this over the last years, and it's not worked. Now, Christian Zionists and Jewish Zionists have joined alliances. And in the United States, they have genetically modified cows. And just noting something on the side, the story of the cow in the Quran, yellow cow, and the Quran, the second biggest chapter in the Quran is called the cow. This is something within their theology. So the Quran makes mention of this, but within their idea of their theology is that now Christian and Jewish Zionists have joined forces to genetically modify a cow, a red heifer, that will not have any other colors within it. And Christian Zionists in the United States have shipped 5 red cows or heifers over to the Zionist regime. And what we saw, this is why it is dangerous, that the minister of heritage took his children to where these cows are, recorded the video, and talked about the purity that the Jewish people will have once these sacrifices are made. So this is for the first time being made at official governmental level, trying to push this idea forward. And this is the danger that we are talking about. This will then usher, as you were saying in the introduction, the idea of the creation, the building of a temple over the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. But before that, what is more dangerous at this short-term stage is that it will increase the numbers of Jews entering Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa from a few hundred. It will turn it into a few tens of thousands. So, and this will fulfill what is within the deal of the century, the idea of spatial and temporal division of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Temporal division is already in place, but the idea of a spatial division will actually take place if these numbers will go up to their tens of thousands. They will exceed the numbers of the Muslims entering the site. And the deal of the century, written within the auspices of Donald Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and checked by Netanyahu before it was published, even the night before, it clearly says that the area of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa should be a shared holy place, taking into account the other religious holidays and needs that need to be done within the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. So all of this, putting this within this context, it is bringing the situation of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa with this right-wing government and their supporters and the rise of the temple groups and everything that they have been preparing for. This is taking it to a very dangerous level, never before.
Okay, shukran jazilan, Doctor, for foregrounding that discussion. And there's very important points that you mentioned there, because listening to you speak and making sense of the entire issue, this is a case of theology, eschatology, and contemporary politics meeting one another almost in a very linear fashion. Uh, so, based on that idea, I would like to ask our Sheikh, Sheikh Ighsaan Taliep, if he can comment regarding essentially Zionist incursions into Masjid al-Aqsa since the taking of the capture of East Jerusalem in 1967. Because since the capture of East Jerusalem, we have seen many attempts at essentially desecrating and destroying, you know, parts of the masjid, and in some cases there was an arson attack as well. How do you read the contemporary developments since the capture of East Jerusalem in 1967?
Khalid, for that enlightenment about the issues around the Haifa and the much vaunted conversation. Of course, in actual reality, as Dr. Khalid had alluded, in a sense, escalating the urgency around this issue, which, again, historically, just to latch on to that point, when the Al-Quds Foundation at the time, especially, was, headed by our colleague and beloved friend, the late Maulana Hassan Hendricks, one of the core areas that he, of course, had given focus to was precisely taking it from this notion of al-Aqsa fi khatar, and these programs that were conducted annually, again, by the likes of Dr. Sheikh Raed Salah, rather, from Fahm, and their programs having always carried the theme or being titled, Al-Aqsa fi Khatar. And so the whole idea of the Zionist strategies, of course, for us, that is, I think, of great concern, and how we believe also that, many of our fellow Jewish brethren confirm this concern about the conflation of the identities, or their identities, on the one hand as Jews, but on the other hand, obviously, as also people who have been really indoctrinated by the propaganda that these two identities are one and the same thing, that you are a Jew and you cannot be a Jew without being a Zionist. So the conflation is also basically a weaponization of religion, and this is not something, of course, which is exclusive to Judaism. Weaponization of religion we've seen across the board, and this is one of, I think, the almost, in a sense, perverse forms thereof. All of them are perversions. This is particularly outstanding. So what we've learned, of course, through those interactions with the historical relations between Maulana Hassan Hendricks also and Sheikh Raed Salah's movement in 1948 Palestine, had been the concern about the one strategy that the Israeli government, of course, had supported and also funded, was this, part of this, in a sense, temple sort of strategies, or the organizations that have been established, particularly to ascend the Temple Mount or to regain the Temple Mount, the alleged Temple Mount of Solomon, which is located on the spot of Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. And so this somehow found expression in the archaeological, under the guise of archaeological excavations of tunnels under the Masjid al-Aqsa, and of course their particular intention having been to try and actually produce archaeological evidence of the existence of the alleged Mount the Temple of Solomon, on the same place of Al Masjid Al Aqsa. For decades, this has been going on, and of course, we do know that this is in the character of the Zionist state, that had there been any evidence, in actual fact, discovered, this would have been foregrounded, and it would have been made one of the biggest, probably, strategies in order to justify their claim on Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, in accordance with the allegation that that is the location of the Temple Mount. So there is as much religious and theological sort of conflation as it is with of course the Zionist project of the objective of having East Jerusalem, as Dr. Khalid had of course alluded to, as the the capital of Israel. And so I think from our side, the emphasis that we should of course also foreground is its current reality, Anwar, as you've alluded to, how that filters into the political and the strategic roles and goals of the Zionist occupation. And of course, these areas, I think for the most part, for the Zionist occupation, is one which of course begins to serve as more foundation or more evidence, supposed to be for the world to demonstrate the claim that they have. But I think we have reached a time where this facade of the Zionist project is being laid bare to the extent that it becomes far more imminent and far more urgent upon especially ourselves as the Ummah of Islam, and for humanity in particular, to stop this monstrous project in its tracks.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Shukran for that, Sheikh Ighsaan. You've mentioned about Al-Aqsa fi Khatar, Al-Aqsa in danger, is a very important campaign globally. So at this moment, I would like to ask our Honorable Sheikh Imam Fuad Samaai, how are the ulama globally looking at the pending events of the slaughter of the Red Heifers, and two, the consistent Zionist attempts at breaching the sanctity of Masjid al-Aqsa. Currently, where are the ulama standing on this issue, and perhaps what is being done internationally to try and, one, raise awareness about this in the ummah, and two, to even stop it, inshallah.
Salamu ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. Anwar, that the question might seem very simple, but when you ask about the sort of role of the ulama, then I unfortunately have to kick off with a very negative response. And that is, which ulama are you referring to? If you're referring to the ulama of South Africa, if you're referring to the ulama of certain parts of the world, we know for a fact, and this is very unfortunate, I have to bring this up, and the fact of the matter is that, can you imagine that a time would ever come that where you needed sanction from your government, from your rulers, to even make a dua for Masjid al-Aqsa right in Masjid al-Haram and Masjid Nabawi. So if you ask which, I would reply maybe in two ways. One is to say that the court ulama, as we call them, we have virtually written them off, and I don't see that why we should, in fact, be concerned about those ulama who have totally sold their souls, and it's amazing that they cannot perceive or even begin to understand as ulama that the status of Masjid al-Aqsa, that is one thing that we should just keep in the back of our mind. I would say that then you have the different countries, and I can speak for South Africa as an example. I don't think that here we have any major issue with regard to our ulama. Generally, that everybody, just at different levels, but each and every one, you'll find that they are in some way or the other either vocal in their defense of Masjid Aqsa, or they are very active in many other ways. Alhamdulillah, in Cape Town in particular, I think that we're very proud of this, and Khalid can attest to this particular point with his last visit to Cape Town, as example, that where he had a 3-day workshop, which was attended by quite a significant number of ulama. Having said that, so the program, for example, in Cape Town, there is a program been carrying on for, Ighsaan can assist me in this one. It's about 20 years now that where they have, that the fasting until the fasting every Thursday until Masjid Aqsa is free, liberated. That's been carrying on for quite a number of years, and it is still carrying on. So that is the one side. The one side is that we are proud to say that the ulama are, very much aware of the situation there. I would just like to latch onto something that earlier mentioned by Sheikh Ighsaan. I think that I'm very concerned about the sort of emotional approach that we take at times, and we sometimes reach a high, and at highs, what we'll call it the Coke or the phenomenon, as example now. Suddenly we'll find ourselves at the high, and then it will just sort of the bubble will just burst and leave it at that. We forget this example that 34 years ago, in 1990, when 17 Palestinians were killed and more than 100 injured by Israeli border police in what became known as the 1990 Temple Mount riots, as example now. Should that just be placed in the background? We had similar attempts to similar attempts to destroy Masjid Aqsa in the 1970s, 1980s. And what is amazing, just a thought that just came to mind, is the fact that the Mufti of Jerusalem, of Baitul Maqdis, at the time, in the 1920s already, that he warned, that was, all of us, we know that Israel occupied Israel was established in 1948. But in 1920s already, when he saw that some Jews moving into Al-Quds already, that time already he warned that keep this in the back of your mind. He was, of course, the founder of Al-Quds, to say that this is definitely, maybe at that time could have been a long-term plan, then which became a medium-term plan over the years, and now it is a very short-term plan that they have in mind, that we should not lose sight of that particular aspect of Masjid Aqsa, fil Qatar, as we call it now. So, lastly, on this particular point, is a concern that I have is that media, especially mainstream media, that they will play a wait-and-see game, as example now, that where they're going to see what the outcome of this Red Heifer ceremony, where it's going to take place, when and how. And some would look at it and say, well, that they probably look at it and say it's a very insignificant minority of Jews or ultra-nationalist Jews, as example now. We tend to forget that there are 17 organizations in Baitul Maqdis working on the destruction of Masjid Aqsa. It's not that one isolated organization. That is one. Secondly, is that we are not going to let the Israeli government of scot-free to say, well, that they're not involved in it. I think that Dr. Khalid mentioned one particular point, as an example, that the Israeli Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development of Israel, that he circumvented protocols in the import of the red heifers, example, from Texas. So it was done through those channels, for example. Now you had the Minister of what's called Jerusalem Affairs, that he delivered a speech in honor of the Heifer's arrival, in September in 2022. And the same ministry has been funding the development of the Mount of Olives area, where ceremony will be taken, which planned to be to take place. So, taking all this into consideration, we have to look at a sort of a broader. It is not Masjid Al-Aqsa. At the last point, just allow me just to make this last point. I don't want to sit in isolation. Masjid Al-Aqsa, it is one thing, but keep in the back of our mind a statement made by Gershon Solomon, as we know that he was the founder of the Temple Mount on Faithful, that he mentioned it in 1983, where he said, whoever controls the Temple Mount has rights over the land of Israel. So it is not confined only a matter of taking over Masjid Al-Aqsa, but it is whoever is going to control the Temple Mount, that they will have right over the entire country of Israel.
Shukran jazilan, respected ulama, for putting the entire conversation into its correct perspective, aligning the theology and the eschatology as well as contemporary political events, and commenting on what has been taking place in and around Masjid Al-Aqsa from 1920, and the role of that the ulama have been playing in trying to raise awareness and defend Masjid Al-Aqsa and the Greater Palestine, inshallah. We will return very, very soon, but at the moment we are going for a quick break, and we will return soon to continue this very, very interesting discussion regarding the slaughter of red heifers on the Mount of Olives, inshallah. Shukran jazeelan.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Respected ulama, is everyone
Millions
okay?
displaced, thousands
Yeah, we
dead,
good. Shall we go
thousands
get a
more
coffee, or
wounded.
it's too long?
Through the genocide, the men, women, and children of Palestine need you. Your support enables our team on the ground to deliver life-saving aid. Help Gaza today. Donate to Penny Appeal South Africa, www.pennyappeal.org.za, 031 1100 573. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
World-class financial services only at Samaai Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic Sharia and ethical financial products, look no further. Samaai Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
When we look at Muslim representation.
Wa barakatuh. Welcome back to this Uqsa special, a special discussion concerning Red Heifer, a red hearing, or something more sinister. the discussion hosted by the United Ulama Council and Al-Quds Foundation in conjunction with Salam Media, Voice of the Cape, Radio Islam International as well. We have with us, continuing our discussion, is Dr. Khalid El Awaisi, Sheikh Ighsaan Taliep, and Imam Fuad Samaai in conversation concerning the slaughter of red heifers at the Mount of Olives. To continue the discussion, and very important points raised by Sheikh Fuad concerning the idea that there are 17 organizations who are bent on the destruction of Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak and have been actively working towards that objective, and to replace the masjid with the third temple, and which will then obviously complete the complete colonization of Palestine. Oftentimes we are presented with the view that the idea of the destruction of Masjid al-Aqsa is actually something of Zionist fringe movements. The Zionist movement itself is not entirely monolithic. There are Zionists who are atheists. There are Zionists who are very, very religious, simultaneously being Jews who are Zionists and very, very religious. But 17 organizations who have been working towards the destruction of the masjid, which also includes the slaughtering of cows as part of the Jewish theology that they believe in. Can we shed some light on this here, Dr. Awaisi?
Yes, this is a very important question that we need to put within its perspective. Israel has occupied Bayt al-Maqdis in 1967, and Al-Masjid al-Aqsa has been under occupation since. And just to tell you a story, that the rabbi, the chief rabbi of the Israeli army, suggested to the generals then that in the midst of war, let us blow up Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, put 200 kilograms of TNT around the Dome of the Rock and blow it up. And that will, in the midst of war, no one will take notice, and then we can get away with it. The secular generals were against this, although taking this a step back to the establishment of the Zionist state, Ben Gurion said that there is no meaning to Israel without Jerusalem, and there is no meaning to Jerusalem without the temple. Even someone secular who does not believe in God. This is something Zionism, Jewish Zionism, and the way it has used religion in order to achieve certain goals. So at that time, the fear was the destruction of Al-Masjid al-Aqsa would only bring an end to the Zionist state. And thus, steps were taken one at a time in order to Judaize Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. And these Zionist temple groups have been on the fringe, and Imam mentioned a few moments ago Gershon Solomon, who in 1990, trying to put the foundation stone for Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, caused the Shahada, the murder of tens of Palestinians inside Al-Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. So in this sense, this Zionist temple groups have been on the fringe of Jewish society, on Israeli society, until the year 2000. After the year 2000, then they started getting representation within the Israeli parliament. So something important also to note here, that most Jews believe that the temple will be built on the site of Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. And what Dr. Ighsaan mentioned a moment ago, that there is not a single evidence of a temple on the site of Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. They've been digging underneath Al-Masjid al-Aqsa for decades. Not a single stone giving evidence that there was ever a Jewish temple on this site has been found. No first temple, no second temple. All of this are just mythology, particularly around the first temple and the way it has been written during the Babylonian exile. So most Jews believe that the temple needs to be built, but it is God that is going to build it. And we have nothing to do. Exactly like with the establishment of the state of Israel, that we should not be interfering in God's business. God is the one. So the majority of the Jews, if you go and ask religious Jews in Palestine, about the idea of building the temple. They believe that it will be built, but it's God's decree. He will build it. He will bring it down from the heavens. These temple organizations are very dangerous because they have prepared, as Maulana mentioned, 17 plus organizations, Women for the Temple, Temple Faithful. All these organizations have now organized themselves and have made an umbrella organization that brings them all together, and have established a Sindarin council in which even all the way to the clothes that will be worn by the rabbis, to the perfume, to the stones, to the gold, everything has been set up and prepared for the establishment of a temple on the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. The last hurdle religiously these groups have, so they've been pushing people over the last 20 years to enter the area of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, and most Jews refuse to do it because the verdict of the chief rabbinate of Israel, it is haram to enter this site. And they have been trying to fight this and try to break this ruling. And the only way that the only hurdle that is left is these red heifers. So genetically modifying 5 red heifers and making an alliance with Christian Zionists in the United, because these red heifers came, as Maulana mentioned, from Texas. They have been, so you can see the alliance between Jewish Zionists and Christian Zionists. And to Christian Zionists, why is this important? Because, you know, Christian Zionism came well before Jewish Zionism. That's number one. And out of every 10 Zionists today, 9 are Christian Zionists. So they're very dangerous. The idea of the establishment of a state of Israel actually came from Christian Zionism beginning in the 1800s. So the idea of Christian Zionists that moving the Jews to Palestine, creating a state for them, moving the capital, the embassy to Jerusalem, the last hurdle to Christian Zionists for the second coming of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, is the building of the temple. And this is part of their psychology on the idea of forcing the hand of God and the Battle of Armageddon. So looking at this, you can see actually Christian Zionism and its theology, its psychology on this, and you can see it within these temple organization trying to break the last hurdle so the last hurdle in the Jewish mind is the idea of the sacrifice and the impurity that they are in, the impurity of the dead. So in order to get out of it, we need the 5 heifers. The Christian Zionists are supporting this and genetically modifying this in order to have the fulfillment and remove this last hurdle, ushering the idea of tens of thousands of Jews entering the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, leading to the building of a temple and the coming of Jesus Christ. So this is, you can see this within both of them, both sides, how they're working together. By the way, the end game for Christian Zionists is that the Jews will be massacred and only those who believe in Jesus will be saved. And Christian Zionists in the United States talk about a Holocaust greater than that of Hitler's. These are anti-Semites. These are Jewish haters that are supporting and they're taking the Jews to their end and they're using them as pawns. So you can see this within this context. And on the other side, these Jewish temple groups cannot stand these Christians and these Christian Zionists. But this alliance is very important. It is a temporary alliance, but at the end of it, both will depart into 2 different directions. So these temple organizations, being on the fringe of Israeli society for a very long time, now have representation in the parliament. They have very strong representation in terms of ministers, decision making, and the names mentioned by our Imam and Maulana are very, you can see how they have affected the policy that is being taken. One last thing to mention here, you've heard 100 years ago, when the resistance in Gaza, and Abu Ubaidah made a statement, he made reference to these heifers that are being planned and slaughtered, and mentioned that the part of the Tufan al-Aqsa, or the flood of al-Aqsa, was actually to try to prevent this. So this was being presented within the 7th of October, was to protect al-Masjid al-Aqsa from this, and to try to be as a deterrent, similar to what happened on the 28th of Ramadan with the sword of Al-Quds that took place back in 2021. And you see this now being pushed to be happening in the month of April. And as Imam Fuad mentioned, even on the opposite area of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, on the Mount of Olives, and everything has been prepared for this sacrifice, waiting. The last checks have to be made on a number of things, also including that they are of age, and also that there is no other hairs within these animals.
Shukran for that. We mentioned Tufan al-Aqsa, the Al-Aqsa flood operation, and even the comments by our heroic brother Abu Ubaidah, the spokesperson of the Al-Qassam brigade in Gaza itself. Sheikh Ighsaan, can you perhaps tell us a little bit about the relationship between these right-wing Christian Zionist organizations with their Jewish Zionist counterparts, and especially in the context of what is taking place in Gaza, because it's the same United States of America who is supporting the current Israeli Zionist colonizers, arming them, funding them, and supplying them with the meanest and most latest and deadliest weapons as they are unleashing all death and destruction on the innocent people of Gaza. Clearly, these issues are not in any way separated. Perhaps if you could tell us a little bit about that, inshallah.
So Jazakallah khair, and again for Dr. Khalid, and just enlightening us about these historical, realities that feed into our current reality, and linking it, of course, to this unholy alliance between the Christian Zionist and the Jewish Zionists. And for me, what is absolutely striking is precisely almost this cognitive dissonance between the two groups, just to achieve an objective which somehow ostensibly is a common objective, but in essence can't be further apart and more divergent in its ultimate sort of outcome, as Dr. Khalid had alluded. And so this alliance is one which is extremely and exclusively, somehow serving and achieving a particular interest of both of the two groups exclusively, and which are mutually exclusive in a sense. So when one considers the as you've mentioned, Brother Anwar, on a world stage or at a global level, the interaction and the interplay between these two players, albeit that on both sides there is pretty nefarious attitudes under the surface, towards one another. But it appears that, this is something that can be deferred for later determination. So when one considers the influence, of course, that in any case, the Zionist globalist sort of funding has on the American government, in turn, the American government, again, of course, in furthering this particular agenda of global Zionist capital, it has a useful sort of partner in right-wing, in a sense, Christian evangelicals, to then further the same particular agenda. I think for us, which is of critical importance, is also to bring the relevance of that scenario to the ground here, to our own context within South Africa. I think this is very critical for us. So when we're talking about, Christian Zionism in a South African space, we must understand that no less, if not more, than 50% of the Christian community in our country are in fact Christian Zionist. And so when we are talking about the need for us to contemplate the relevance or the impact of that reality onto our own, I would say, invidious current relationship of Zionist funding and its role in the space of political party funding. So the whole scenario there globally finds almost a replica on the ground here in the South African context. And Dr. Khalid El Awaisi, we've recently been at a common attendance at a conference in Istanbul, and even in certain more private conversations before that, he can attest to the extent almost of, in a sense, a disbelief on the part of activists from across the globe, and especially from the Muslim world, for the phenomenal stance of, or the very ethical stance on behalf of global citizens and the global community that the South African government had taken to call out on a global stage the injustices of the genocide of the Zionist occupation against the Palestinian people. I think for us as Muslims in particular, but also as South Africans, we have a less, I think, generally speaking, we have a lesser appreciation just for that dynamic and the impact of that dynamic, particularly from the lens of the global ummah. And so Dr. Khalid can most certainly elaborate more on that particular point. But for me, perchance just to round off of this particular point is to say that we are facing, in actual fact, the same enemies that the ummah and decent humankind, decent human beings across the globe who have gone to the capitals and the streets of their major centers across the globe to object to the stances that the governments have been taking in support of the Zionist occupation project in Palestine. And so that having been said, we are, of course, and this is important, of course, for media houses like Sana Media to take forward in these few remaining days in South Africa, which is leading up to a hotly contested election kind of scenario, unprecedentedly so, and of the core elements which certain the Muslim ummah, and look, there are many in the interfaith movement, both from the Christian community and the Jewish community, who are standing sometimes even more effectively in solidarity with the Palestinian community, and more consistently so than even the Muslim community. So in South African society in general, there is that, but a large part of South African society is also Christian Zionist. We've had some times a person thinks these are loony, expressions coming from somebody who has occupied a position none less than the Chief Justice in that position prior to the current Chief Justice, who had made pronouncements that he had, seen dreams and he had seen visions as a Christian Zionist to stand in support of the Israeli Zionist project in Palestine. And so that, I think, should send some reality checks down our spines.
Absolutely. The role that Muslim activists need to play on the ground concerning Palestine as a whole and Masjid al-Aqsa generally is one that needs to be much more consistent and much more grounded within basically Islam as a worldview, as opposed to essentially jumping onto the bandwagon of every other ideological ism that passes us by. And I think that's a challenge that we have to accept and an issue that we must address, inshallah. Uh, I do feel, though, that we also have to recognize the fact that the Muslim community globally, in the Ummah as a global family, has been the most consistent on the issue of Palestine. Long before almost any other community came to the cause, came to the struggle for justice and the liberation of Palestine and the Palestinian people. But with that said, the Ummah must continue to do much more in a very consistent and proactive fashion, inshallah. As part of our discussion, Sheikh Fuad, if you can comment on, for example, how would, from an Islamic perspective, based on our aqidah as Muslims, our beliefs and our theology as Muslims, how should we be looking at these events that are taking place at the Mount of Olives? Because we have our own theology in terms of, for example, the coming of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam and the events of Akhir Zaman, the end of time events. So now when, for example, Zionist, Jewish Zionist groups who are very, very religious and very, very militant are talking about, ushering in the third temple through the destruction of Masjid al-Aqsa, which will then they also believe, lead to the coming of their own Messiah. How should we be viewing such events? What should the common Muslim understand on the ground?
I think that contemporary ulama, when I speak about contemporary ulama, I would refer to the more younger generation of ulama, that they view, I've read quite a bit on this now, quite a number of articles on this, that where they view this as the promise in Surah Al-Isra, that where Allah mentioned about the second sort of time when they will re-enter Masjid al-Aqsa, and the Yahud in this particular case. How we view it as example now is that where we say, irrespective of what, the fact is that as Muslims, we are duty bound. We have, that there are many ayat of Quran which time won't allow, because I'm looking at the time just because 5 minutes left here, so we won't have time to go into all those ayat of Quran and all the hadith relating to this particular topic. But what we're saying is that as a Muslim, the consciousness that's expected of each and every Muslim, as Allah mentions, that one particular point which I want to make is when Allah mentions, it is this particular ayah which gives us a lot of hope. And that is one thing in my Eid khutbah, which I delivered in part. I devoted that particular lecture, in thanking the people of Gaza. And I want to use this opportunity as well. And I mentioned this particular ayah that where we as Muslims should learn this one particular point, thank the Ummah in Gaza and in Palestine in general, to tell them, you have taught us what Iman is. You have taught us what Yaqeen is. When Allah mentioned that for you, the outcome of this entire issue that we find playing out in occupied Palestine, that there's only one of two outcomes. One is Ihdal Husnayain. One is victory, or the other is what? It's Shahada. And this is one particular, that I think that we needed a bit more time to discuss this particular phenomenon, that where the non-Muslim world, as example, we can't expect them to understand this. I saying that how faith, what amount of yaqeen, that has played out during the last how many days? 200 days. We need to understand. So, what I would simply say is that we as Muslims in the rest of the world, we owe the people of Palestine a great amount of gratitude. It's they who, on behalf of the Ummah, has come to the defense of Masjid Aqsa. I always wonder that what would have happened if the Palestinians didn't stand up in defense of Masjid Aqsa. I'm sure that third temple would have stood there today already. People like Sheikh Salah, Raid Salah, as example now, the leadership of Sheikh Raid Salah, they've given their lives, they've made so much sacrifices that they've made. Do we give enough recognition? I think, alhamdulillah, we do show a lot of appreciation for it. What I was just a bit concerned about this particular time, and I just want to make this point as last point on my side now. What we have to keep in mind in this particular Red Heifer, what they call now, sacrifice, it will be the first time that something like this will happen after 2,000 years. In fact, this will only be the 10th. You know that according to their own scholars, they say that there were only 9 heifers that were sacrificed since the time of Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. You can imagine that now this is history in the making for those who are pro this particular project. So I would say that strategically that the planning was not good, or otherwise that Tufan of Al-Aqsa really threw a spanner in the works here. Can you imagine if there was not this uprising that we found, or this happening here, what's happening in Gaza at the moment now? If this Red Heifer sacrifice would have taken place, you'd have had people from across the world flying into Tel Aviv and on to Jerusalem to attend this. I think, of course, circumstances, and safety and security, which cannot be guaranteed by Israel at the moment, that would definitely put a damper on this particular project. So I want to conclude from my side to say as well that people take out time. We have a whole list of issues and points why we need to show gratitude toward the people of Palestine. Okay? And for this, in this discussion, let us just keep it to Masjid Aqsa. We want to tell Sheikh Raid Salah. We want to tell all those who are involved in this, all those thousands that try every single week, every day, try to enter Masjid Aqsa, is their attendance, is their presence there, that alhamdulillah, they're still keeping Masjid Aqsa alive, and therefore they require our du'as, and they require our well wishes and our support in whatever way we can, inshallah.
Ameen, inshallah. Shukran jazilan for that. I think also what has to be mentioned in closing is that Masjid al-Aqsa and the people of Palestine and the whole of Palestine is something that is critical to the conscience of the Ummah at this moment. The question of Palestine, the continuing colonization and injustice and apartheid that exists in Palestine is one of the moral conundrums that exist in our age, and it is an issue that if a person does not have a moral stance on this here, we cannot collaborate and work with them. It is an issue that distinguishes those who are on the part of righteousness and justice and those who are on the part of tyranny and oppression. As one of the viewers of the session mentioned in the comment section, that it's implying that it's very, very important for us to continue to visit Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. The Islamic resistance movement has called for people to flood Masjid al-Aqsa, Muslims, in terms of occupying the masjid to defend the masjid. And we say to the global Muslim community, whoever is capable of traveling to Masjid al-Aqsa to visit this important site of Islam must continue to do so. Continuing to do so is laying claim to the is laying claim to Masjid al-Aqsa on behalf of the Ummah. This is something that belongs to the Ummah and something that we will not forsake, inshallah. And with that, I would like to thank our respected panel, Dr. Khalid El Awaisi, Sheikh Ighsaan Taliep, and Sheikh Fuad Samaai for joining me tonight on this important discussion, Red Heifer, a red herring or something more sinister, under the auspices of the United Ulama Council of South Africa, Al-Quds Foundation, CTIEC Cape Town Islamic Educational Center, and the media partners being Salam Media, Voice of the Cape, and Radio Islam International. Shukran jazilan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم
عليكم
السلام.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.